Hi everybody, it's Dr. Christine Anderson, and I am here tonight to talk about 9 homeopathic remedies for fever. This is a series I'm doing on fever, and I'm going to jump right in, but I have a few things to remind you if you haven't yet looked at the video I did on why I love fevers. This goes over really what are fevers, the causes, why they're beneficial, etc., etc. So I do recommend that you go take a look at this video if you've not yet seen it, and I'll put a link in the description below. I also did a video on 8 essential oils for fever support, which I do highly recommend as well. Essential oils work great to help support some of the symptoms that you get with fever and helps to support the body's healing processes, just like homeopathy. But one note, if you are using both homeopathy and essential oils, you're going to want to use them separately. So I recommend taking your homeopathic remedy first, waiting 10 to 15 minutes, and then using your essential oils. And then you want to wait again a good amount of time, probably about a half an hour or so, before you use any more homeopathy. So just make sure you're not using the two together. Nothing will happen. It's just that homeopathy is a system based on energy, and that energy will get disrupted by the other frequency and energies of the essential oils. So we don't want them to compete with each other. We want them each to do their own action. So a little caveat and just a little bit here, because even though most fevers you're able to deal with them at home, if there are certain things going on, you want to call your healthcare provider right away. In other words, a newborn, if there's a fever in a newborn less than 3 months old, you're going to contact your healthcare provider right away. And then the temperature can get a little bit higher for those that are a little bit older. But just to be safe, you want to contact your healthcare provider and let them know what's going on. And you can even tell them what you're doing to help support the fever, but just so that they are on alert. And then if fevers are going, if they're not responding, if they keep going on and on and on, of course, contact your healthcare provider. And if there are any symptoms like extreme lethargy, and the person is not responsive, maybe they're dehydrated, or if they have a headache with a painful stiff neck, especially if there's any rash and confusion, this is possibly a sign of meningitis and is a medical emergency. And I talk about febrile seizures in my first videos on why I love fevers. I won't go into it, but basically it is a mechanism the body uses to drop the temperature really quickly. And in general, it causes no long-term problems for most people, usually children. But certainly if this does occur, you do want to contact your healthcare provider. All right, let's go into a little bit of homeopathy basics. So I will do a video, hopefully next week, on what is homeopathy, the whole story behind homeopathy and how it is used as a healing modality. But just a few basic things here, like they are energetic remedies. And what they do is they help stimulate the body's natural healing mechanism. So they work with the body to help heal. It's a great modality because it is generally very safe, especially for pregnancy and babies and young children. Because it is energetic, there really is no actual physical property of the element in there, whether a plant was used, a mineral, or an animal source. Once you get back past what's called 12C, so let me back up a minute. What happens is that you would take that material and you would keep diluting it, and every time you dilute it, then you would do something called succussion, where you are striking the remedy that you're working on. Traditionally, it was against a leather-bound book. Sometimes I do it against my hand. But what this does is infuse those therapeutic properties of the plant, mineral, or animal into the remedy. And each time you're diluting, it, in theory, gets weaker as far as the material in there, but what happens with homeopathy is it actually gets stronger in its therapeutic effects. So it is based on the law of similars, where like cures like, and it has to do with, for instance, coffee. Coffee usually keeps us awake, correct? For those of us who have working adrenal glands, at least. Well, if you're having trouble sleeping, then you would take a very diluted dose of coffee called coffea creda. It's a homeopathic remedy, and that will help stimulate your body's natural healing processes for you to be able to sleep with certain circumstances. And that's the other thing with homeopathy too, is that the remedy will only work if it is the right remedy that is indicated. And this is where people fall into just using what's on the shelf and not looking at likes and dislikes, things that make the person better or worse, certain personality traits. And these are very important to get the right remedy, because if you're not using the right remedy, while it might not hurt you, it's not going to help you. So if you want to use a remedy, you need to know these things, which is what I'm going to talk about for fever, because believe it or not, all fevers are not created equally. So let's dive right in to the first one, which is aconite napellus. And then in parentheses, I have aconite. This is the shortcut name for this homeopathic remedy. You see it there, it's a flower, and it is homeopathic monkshood. So you might find an herb called monkshood, but that is the full power herbal remedy for the plant. But in this instance, you're going to be using a dosage that is far diluted. And I recommend using a 30C potency when in doubt. 12C is also acceptable, but if you start going any less, you start having actual plant material or mineral or animal in there, and so I like to use these moderate potencies for most cases. And this is the other instance too. If you're using something or you're not sure, reach out to a healthcare provider, such as myself. I do have a diploma in homeopathy from the British Institute of Homeopathy, and I've been using homeopathy for probably 20, 25 years now. I don't even know anymore. So let's go down when you would use aconite. And now this particular remedy is most useful if you use it in the first 12 hours of illness. So you want to use it right away in the acute situation where you have fever with restlessness, anxiety, and fear. There's also a sudden onset. It just wham, there is the fever. It came on very suddenly. It's usually worse in the evenings and at night. And in particular, if the person has been exposed to wet, cold, or windy weather, they may get hot and sweaty, but easily chilled and very thirsty for cold drinks. And this is also a good remedy to try if there is fever with a flu. So that is aconite napellus. The next one is arsenicum album. And this is actually a homeopathic remedy made from arsenic trioxide. And so that is a type of mineral, and there is the mineral structure right there. And this is great to use in someone who has a high fever that is peaking between about midnight and 3 a.m. Their face can be hot, but their body is chilled, and they want fresh air. Now they're thirsty, but instead of gulping water down, they take small little sips very frequently. And they also do better with warm drinks, such as teas. They're going to be exhausted, restless, anxious, and weak. And there may or may not be vomiting and or diarrhea present. So when you're looking at a remedy, you look at what is the best fit. Sometimes not everything is there, but this is the profile of a person who might benefit from Arsenicum album. Belladonna. This is the homeopathic remedy of deadly nightshade. Totally fine to use as a homeopathic remedy, not something you want to take directly. But what this does is if you took belladonna, what would happen is the presentation that I'm going to talk about here for indications for use of belladonna would occur. And this is how the Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, created these profiles by looking at what happens when I give a person a full-on dose of the substance, what are the symptoms that come up, and then I'm going to give them a very diluted dose to help with those symptoms, and this is what the law of similars and like cures like means. So this is going to be helpful if a fever comes on suddenly, is very high, and the person has chills. They will have often a hot head with cold hands and feet. Their face is flushed and red and hot, and their lips and gums may be red. They'll have glassy eyes, dilated pupils, no sweat, and they will not have thirst. So this is a key because this sounded almost a lot like aconite, and not aconite, arsenicum. And so the absence of thirst is one of the ways that you can tell belladonna might be helpful with someone with a high fever. It's also really helpful if there are other symptoms present like throat pain, earache, and especially on the right side. So even with homeopathic remedies, there will be a side preference for that remedy. They also might be delirious or hallucinate, and this is a remedy best given 24 to 48 hours when the symptoms have presented. Bryonia is homeopathic wild hops, and this is good for people with fever, with body aches. It's also good for recurrent fevers. In other words, a fever comes on, it kind of goes away a little bit. Someone may wake up in the morning and feel pretty good, and then the fever comes back on again, especially later in the day. They want to lie down. They don't want to move. Motion aggravates the symptoms, and they might even also have an intense headache. They're very irritable, want to be left alone, and they have an unquenchable thirst for water. So these are the people gulping down water, trying to relieve their symptoms and dry mouth. They're worse in a warm room, they want fresh air, and this is also a great remedy to try if it's a slow progressing flu with severe achiness. Ferrum phosphoricum, or you'll also see it be called Ferrum phos for short, is a homeopathic preparation of the phosphate of iron. And this is good for a fever that's very mild to moderate. It's not going to work for a high fever, and generally the fever comes on slowly. It's also good for a fever accompanied by shivers, typically later in the afternoon. They may feel tired, they might have pain in their joints that are worse with movement, and it's also good to use in the early stage of any illness that's occurring along with the fever that has a lot of inflammation, for instance, things like bronchitis or otitis, which is inflammation of the inner ear. Now, Gelsemium is probably the quintessential remedy, the one that you think of when you think of traditional homeopathic flu remedies. And this is the yellow jasmine homeopathic preparation. And it is good to try this remedy if the person has fever with dizziness, weakness, sleepiness. They may even feel faint or they may faint. Their body feels heavy and achy all over. They might have a headache at the back of their head, which is right at the occiput, and it may even radiate over to their forehead or to their eye. They can have chills up their spine and trembling in the body. This is another one where they don't have thirst. So Gelsemium is another great remedy to have on hand. Nux vomica is the homeopathic poison nut. And when you look at the picture there, it almost looks like oranges, but these are not fruits that you want to eat right off the tree. Definitely want to do this in a homeopathic version. So this is often a remedy that serves people who are overindulgers. So a fever after overindulgence, whether it be food, alcohol, drugs, coffee, tobacco, they're burning the candle at both ends, they're a workaholic, they're type A. This is often a nux vomica personality, and they will have the fever with shivering, chills, shakes, twitching. They want to remain covered throughout the whole series of what goes on with the fever, the different stages of fever. They're very oversensitive to light and noise and odors. Basically, they want the dark room, the mask on, like just the eye mask and coverings over their ears. Very irritable. It is definitely worse in the morning with the fever and the symptoms. They are better for warm drinks, and oftentimes there are also gastric symptoms like diarrhea or constipation or vomiting. So this is, think about when or if ever you've been poisoned, you want to get it out of your system. So that is homeopathic nux vomica. And we are on to Pulsatilla. So this is a homeopathic wind flower. And the characteristics of this are just like a wind coming in, very transient. The person is very emotional and their feelings are changing all the time. Yes, I want this, and no, I don't want that. And now I just changed my mind. I want the door open. I want it closed. These are the children that are clingy and whiny and cranky. Oftentimes, this is a remedy I use for children when they're teething. They don't want to be left alone. They are chilly with a fever, usually around 4 p.m., and there is absolutely no thirst. They have a dry mouth, but they are not wanting anything to drink. They want cold air, and they do not want to be in a warm place, and they for sure don't want to be left anywhere alone. So this is where you just kind of snuggle in with the child, give them some Pulsatilla, and can be very, very helpful. RHUS toxicodendron, or RHUS tox for short, is homeopathic poison ivy. So this is a remedy that is very useful for fever with extreme body aches. They just want to move. They're very restless, trying to get into a position that's very comfortable, trying to get relief. It's often a fever that occurs after being in the rain, getting wet in the rain. Chills might occur around 7 p.m. and after the chills, then it will be followed by heat. So there is both of the types of things coming on with the RHUS tox profile. They have great thirst, and they have dry tongue, often red, and dry lips and mouth. Maybe the lips are cracking. This is the RHUS tox profile. All right, those were the 9, and now I have some honorable mentions here. other helpful homeopathic remedies for fever that you might want to keep stocked up. Chamomilla, especially if you have children, this is the one that really helps with teething, the low-grade fevers that come with teething and the irritability that comes with it. They're cranky, and you might see one of their cheeks red and one pale, which is, again, pathognomonic that chamomilla is going to be helpful. EUPATORIUM perfolatum is good for fever with the flu, a high fever with deep bone pain, chills up the spine, it's thirst for cold drinks, and maybe vomiting might also be occurring. Now, remember I talked about febrile seizures very briefly, and this is the way that the body can very quickly lower temperature, so it is a fail-safe mechanism so that the brain does not burn up. But if you know a child is prone to febrile seizures, or if that is a concern, you can use MAG-PHOS in the 6X and also CALC-PHOS in the 6X. These are minerals, so there is nothing in here that is going to create a problem with having a lower potency in the 6X. If you can't find 6X, you can get 6C, and then go on up. You can use 12X or 12C if you can't find the 6. And if you can't find those, 30 is really common. Give that a try. So you want to alternate these every few hours to help the body through the illness for children that are prone to febrile seizures. So that may help prevent them. MERCURIUS SOLUBIS is great for fever with a lot of sweating that is really fetid and oily. And believe it or not, that sweating even increases the discomfort, so it doesn't even make them feel better. And this is also indicated when there is a lot of saliva and also a sore throat. Natrum MURICATUM is good for fever with chills, a lot of sweating again, that's very sour smelling, and a lot of thirst. Phosphorus is great for a child with a fever who is happy as can be. They're just playing, they're not uncomfortable, they're in good spirits, and they have a thirst for cold drinks. And sulfur is a remedy you can use after the period of aconite. Remember, aconite is really only good for about 12 hours. And then you can use sulfur, which think of with sulfur things that are red and hot and burning, where the skin is dry, hot, no sweat, tongue's red and dry. So that's a type of profile that occurs with sulfur. Well, so hopefully you found some of this helpful and useful. If you want to stock up on your homeopathic remedies, I'm going to put a link to my Fullscript account in the description where I will create a profile with these homeopathic remedies in there, and you can purchase them, create an account and purchase them for 10% off. So I'm going to put that in the description below once I finish with this video and get that all set up in Fullscript. I am a chiropractor. I am board certified in chiropractic pediatrics and pregnancy. I also am certified in childhood developmental disorders. I'm also a mother of 3 children who are now adults. And so I've got practical and professional experience with fever. And as I said, I do have my diploma in homeopathy. So if you found any of this useful, please give me a big thumbs up. This does help other people see the video, and I really want to get all this information out there to as many people as possible because fevers have such a great benefit, and I want the body to be supported rather than those fevers being suppressed. If you are so inclined for this information that I put out on health and wellness on all different types of topics and levels, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification button, and please let me know what you are interested in hearing. I am planning on doing a series in January on pulsed EMF. So if you don't know what that is, you're going to learn all about it. It's a great healing modality. Well, have a great week. I will be here next week, Tuesday, 6:30 p.m., going on live, but you can always catch the replays anytime. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.